Don't you want it? 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 You lose your little mind. My Deadlights.
Welcome to the Deadlights podcast, Minisode. I'm little Mini Sam.
I'm little Mini Leslie. That was probably obnoxious.
I mean, this is our Minisode. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, that's
on
true.
Minisode.
Yeah.
So we can be obnoxious. We can be
Serious.
We can be
I'm regal now.
regal. We can finish each other's.
Sandwiches.
Yes.
Did you hear that little voice? That came from me too.
There's someone else here. But yeah, you're back for more, and we're here to
Yes.
give it to you. We're here to
How
give
do you
you
like
more.
it?
How do you like it?
How do you like your sandwiches?
How do you like me now?
More mayo, mustard. Are you a ketchup person in your sandwiches? You
I don't
weirdo.
know. So last week, this is a little episode,
Right.
little special episode,
Yes.
because we're having a multiple part minisode going on
Yes.
here. We're talking about what I call the big three.
Yeah.
And last week we talked about Michael
Michael.
Myers.
I know who they are now.
Now you do. You've learned. And this week we're going to talk about Jason. Jason from Friday the 13th.
Oh, who gave you that shirt?
Mm,
It's so cool.
I think someone found it in the Deadlights. Yes, this was given to me by you, and I appreciate it. It actually is
It's
a really
awesome.
cool shirt. It's like
Yeah.
all the different faces of Jason in all the different movies. So you have like him in the mask, but you also have him super ugly under the mask and him as a kid, and then him in space.
That I knew that was gonna be in space.
And yeah, it's actually really cool. I mean, you have his mother too.
Yeah, she kind of looks like Harley Quinn.
A little bit, yeah. It's pretty cool, honestly, because like the other big three movies that we are going to talk about, there's so many installments at this point, and so much like lore that has been made about these characters, and through the upwards of like 12 installments that these characters have, that they go through a lot of different evolutions as these movies come out. And I think specifically with Jason and the Friday the 13th series, it's interesting because in the first movie he's not even the killer. It's not even him that's the one that's doing it. Sorry, spoiler alert, but it's his mother that's going around because she's jealous, or not jealous, she's upset that her son, who was disfigured, was bullied and ended up drowning in Camp Crystal Lake's lake because no one was paying attention to him.
So he's dead.
In the first one, that's what they say. But then as these movies started to be made, they kind of started to go back and rewrite the history. When he comes back in the second one, they kind of rewrote it. So, oh wait, he didn't actually die in the drowning. He's just been living in the woods as like a feral child, I guess.
We saw the second one.
Which we saw, yeah.
Yeah.
And every movie is like, okay, and now in this one we're establishing he actually has superhuman strength, and like then he comes back from the dead again, and like as these movies go on, we're just getting more and more crazy convoluted backstory of these guys just to fit the mold of the movie.
I wonder
essentially.
if the first one was such a success and he wasn't even the killer, I'm just thinking, like, why didn't they have the mom continue to be that looming killer? I mean, I know that we hear her voice, and essentially that is why he has a shrine of hers, indicating that he is killing for her.
Yes.
But there isn't the big three are all men figures.
Yeah.
You know? So I wonder why they didn't stick with the women figure being the killer.
I think that from what I've read, they wanted to just leave that story behind. You know, they wanted to make this just this movie, the mother is the killer, and we leave this behind. But because it was such a success, people wanted to know, okay, what about that kid? You know, what
Yeah.
about that kid in the lake? What happened to him? Because at the end of the first movie, there's like this jump scare of little Jason coming out of the water and pulling the final girl in.
Right.
So people are like, wait a second, what's that about?
Which is really interesting. Well, it's really funny because in the second one, you don't even have to see the first one like you mentioned when we were about to see it. We were going to get the whole backstory because they repeatedly recycle these scenes into the second one.
Yep. It's weird because the lore that they build up in the first movies is at the same time super important and also not important at all in these movies because they're only giving us the information that they want to give us to then serve this movie. So they're like, oh, well, he actually wasn't dead and he's just been out now.
Right.
Oh, well, he actually wasn't dead now because he has superhuman strength and superhuman power. This is like a character that just like so many things are just being put on top of it, top and top. It's just like at the end you're like, who is this person? Like we've gone so far away. The filmmakers initially wanted you to have empathy for Jason because he's an innocent. At the beginning
he's a child.
He's a kid who,
even though he's like fucking 6'6" or whatever. Yeah,
and his original story is that, you know, he's a bullied kid who died because no one was paying attention to him. You're supposed to...
That's so sad.
You're supposed to have sympathy for him and empathy and almost are rooting for him. And I think that that's what we kind of lose in these later movies is like... At the point of him being a massive 6-foot person going around killing people, we have no empathy for him at all anymore.
No.
It's just like he's become another just deadly force.
Whatever's in his path, he just chops it down.
But it goes back to this mother thing.
Yeah.
It always, like, that's the thing that they've always, no matter what iteration of Jason we're getting, that is always important. His mother.
Yeah. It's creepy. He has, like, her sweater, her head, you know, on a table and just like dead bodies around her. Yeah, definitely very, very creepy.
And he's just another one of these images that's like that. The hockey mask obviously is just like this huge iconic image of horror in general. And it's interesting because that didn't even come around until the third movie. In the first movie, obviously, it was just the mother.
It was just a...
Yeah, in the second movie, it was just a bag over his head.
Oh, right!
I don't know if that's even on here. And then it wasn't until the third movie that he picks up the hockey mask. So it took a while for them to even get to the Jason that we all think of. And in the end, it's just really, he's a vehicle. His image is just a vehicle to make a crazy slasher movie, essentially. And by the later movies... his motivations mean very little.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter at that point. Just get him alive, get him up so he can start killing people. And that's all he really is.
Does anybody... No, people do tend to survive by the end of them.
Those movies fall within the very typical slasher formula where you have the final girl who is the survivor.
And then the next movie, they show up and
they die. Or at the end of the movie, there's like that last jump scare where they're being pulled through the window or pulled underwater. That's where it usually ends.
Would you consider having Scream among these?
I mean, I think that Scream is...
its own thing?
Scream, to me, is... a movie where it's another moment of them taking the horror genre and flipping it on its head and taking it to a different level. Because Scream is essentially taking these three movies that we're going to be talking about in these minisodes and then turning a mirror on them and being like, it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of horror movie that is... They're aware of the slasher rules. They're then using those rules to either their advantage or then flipping them on their head. I think Scream is like completely different than these movies, and are it's almost like a response to those movies, which is interesting because the director and writer of Nightmare on Elm Street, which is one of these big threes that we're talking about, is the writer and director of Scream.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he's like, Wes Craven is like a main staple in horror genre and has evolved the genre multiple times. So
I knew that Scream is mostly teenagers and it's kind of like a revenge kind of type of like story, but besides that, I might have seen the first one when I was like in kindergarten, but also I can't really differentiate between Scream and scary movie.
Well, and
I don't know which one I saw as a kid.
Sure.
So I don't know if I've seen
it's
any of the Screams.
I think that Scream is it's in the bucket for sure. I think it's a really important horror movie because it turned the genre on itself and became very tongue-in-cheek about the genre itself. One of the first times that the genre did that. One of the first movies to actually use horror in pop culture in a movie.
And isn't it also kind of like a mystery of like, who is it?
It's very much you don't know who it is. Yeah. And yes, it is. And it is at some points funny. And that's kind of the thing. It's making fun of the genre, but also celebrating it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great movie. I think it's different than these three movies because it's almost using the things that these movies set up in a different way, in a different light, from a different perspective. So Scream, I think, would not have been made if these three movies were not here.
I agree with you.
Yeah. It was also made almost 20 years after these movies, too. So 10 or 15 to 20 years after them. So
I just have like little random like facts about Scream. Because I like read it on like BuzzFeed or something. And one of them was being that like Drew Barrymore, like when she's like talking on the phone, they had to tell her, in order to get her reaction, they had to tell her really sad stories about puppies dying or some shit like that. So her being just like, no, is her like the director actually like talking to her and being like, hey, so there was a puppy that like was crossing the street and it got ran over. And it was the owner, actually.
Oh, no!
Or something like that, so... No, stop it!
Hey, whatever gets you there, I guess.
Yeah.
Whatever gets you there. I do think of the big three, I like the Friday the 13th movies for what they are. I think they're fun. And obviously they're huge in popular culture.
I like playing the video game.
And
I mean, I never played it, but I saw people play it.
I just think if I had to pick a ranking, I think that Jason would be the third on the list. Just because he becomes, to me, just a vehicle for these slasher movies and for death, essentially. There's nothing really more to his character to break down other than when he wakes up at the beginning of the movie and there's going to be death. And that's about it. I think it's unfortunate that there's not more about there's not much more about his character that we can break down and look at, because unfortunately I think the movies at a certain point just did his character a disservice and just kind of made him super two-dimensional.
And I asked you jokingly, I was like, haha, has he ever gone to space? Because when you have no other stories to tell, you take things to space.
Just put them in space.
Just because you want to keep going with the franchise. And you were like, oh yeah, he does. And I was like, no. No, they didn't.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean,
like Fast and Furious too.
It's just
fucking go to space.
They go to space. Yeah, because you're right. There's not much. They haven't set up the character to be interesting enough to go many places.
Yeah, they've either conquered everything or murdered everything in a sense, and it's like, well, where else can we take it? Paris. Like,
Well, and I think it's unfortunate, and all those later movies, again, like I said, I think they're fun. I think they're really just fun movies to experience. There's not much else to them except that, which I think is unfortunate because I really do like that first movie. I think that it's a very big twist that ends up happening. It being the mother, it's not even this legend that they've kind of set up. And then from there, they kind of just, I think, just do his character a disservice by trying to... At a certain point, it doesn't even feel like they're trying to make him anything more than just, it's Jason killing people. And they just kind of stop there. And that's it. That's it. They don't flesh him out anymore.
But how many people, if they were to release, you know, a new Friday the 13th movie in October?
For sure. They
people
know
are going to be outside.
It's a moneymaker.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like Scream just got, you know, rebooted and it has a lot of the original characters. Or actors.
And they know that thing's going to sell. And unfortunately, I think of the three, like Friday the 13th from the beginning, I think was just cashing a check.
Oh, yeah.
Because when they made the title before they made the story. They're like, oh, a movie called Friday the 13th will bring people out. And they sold the movie essentially to the studio just with the title. So they didn't even go into it with a solid story. They went into it with the mindset of, we can make a lot of money off of this.
And, you know, when you hear those words as a producer, as a filmmaking, like, space, you want something that's going to keep cashing in. Come on.
Come on.
We like money. But with that, with years and years of making a movie and not adding anything to it, it just starts becoming a little dull.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
What I will say is it's incredible how much his image has stuck despite that.
Yeah. Everybody knows him.
He is, I think, of the three, even though he's probably the third on the list for me as interesting characters, he's got to be number one on the list of visually iconic. Because you're right. You see him, anyone sees him, they know who that
I've
is.
met a person who served us, and they were wearing a Jason mask. And it was like tilted. No,
mask.
They were literally
Interesting
in a
serving.
and I was like, "Hi, I have a podcast." No, they were wearing a sweater with the mask on, and then at the end, I just kind of was like, "Oh, I want to talk to them," and Adam's like, "Go, go, go!" And I grabbed their Instagram, so we're following each other now. And I let her know about the podcast. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
People love Jason. I get it. I do get it. He is fun. He is fun. Not in like a chilling out with him sort of way, but in like watching him kill people.
Grabbing tea with his mom.
Ooh, his mother's head. She's got a little tea in front of her. And
what's her name? Mother.
What is her name? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah. Oh well.
Betty. She looks like a
Betty. Mommy Betty.
Barbara.
That actually sounds right.
Yeah. She looks like a B word.
I'm Mrs. Voorhees. I think she just called herself Mrs. Voorhees.
Oh.
I'm Mrs. Voorhees.
Barbara, Mrs. Voorhees.
Yeah, so, I mean,
anyway.
That's all I got to say about Jason, I guess.
That's all I got to say about that.
Ain't that much to him.
Well, I think I'm understanding this genre a little better of slasher film, because I went into it just being like, holy shit, this is gonna be gruesome. And I know that they do after, like, you know, the more recent ones are very gruesome, but the first couple of them are just really nice storytelling of just having, like, there's actually substance there.
Yes.
So I was actually pretty impressed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. I can't really, you know, give this a bad, what was the word I want to use?
Well, I think, yeah, it's like, because those later films are so famous for just being what they are, you forget about, oh shit, like, there's a place where this started. There's a reason there.
There's a reason why they're so iconic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can't fault them for that. Jason.
I will remember their names now.
Yes, you will. And we got one more left. My favorite boy.
Your favorite boy.
My favorite boy, Freddy, next week.
Freddy.
Yeah. That's part 2 of the big 3.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next week with
Tune
part
in.
3 of
Absolutely.
The big 3.
Thank you for stopping by. Listen to us.
Listen to us, please.
Talk
Listen
more.
to us. Talking.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Keep listening.
Yeah. Well, you can follow me on Instagram, Color Me Leslie. You can follow the podcast as well, the Deadlights Pod.
You can follow me at BPPritchyT on Instagram. And also Playground Social, which is the studio that we are recording this in.
Follow them. They're pretty cool. All of them are really nice dudes.
But until next minisode, let's get
mini
spooky. Jason just wants his mommy.